Okay, I think we're going to get going here. Before we do anything else, I want to make sure we've got a couple people I think we're calling in. Mallory, are you there? I believe you are.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. And then Kent, are you in yet?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So that's Mallory Ackerman from Visit Fargo Moorhead and Kent from Livewire. You all know him. Let's do introductions quickly. I will count them as introduced. Charlie Johnson, representing Visit Fargo Moorhead, part-time for this process.
Claire Hughes, Clubhouse Hotel and Suites.
Emma McIntyre, Folkways Community Nonprofit.
Shannon Full, Fargo Moorhead, West Fargo Chamber.
Tim Mahoney, Mayor, City of Fargo.
Michelle Turnberg, Fargo City Commission.
Dave Pepcorn, City Commission.
Eric Johnson, Assistant City Attorney.
Joe Raso, Greater Fargo Moorhead EDC.
Denise Kolpak, City Commission.
Jim Gilmore, City Staff.
Shirley Hughes, Visit Fargo Moorhead, incoming CEO.
Well, you're already in.
I'm in.
You're not still coming in, you're in, okay. Okay, so a couple of housekeeping things before we get to the traffic engineer part, which we're grateful to. Thank you, Jeremy. I just want to make sure that you know that starting next week, for the next 2 weeks, we're going to have Q&A sessions with assuming the City Commission approves the 4 finalists on Monday, which I will be here to present, then the next 2 weeks of our meetings will be an hour each for the four developers left. And those are actually, we're not really asking them for a presentation there. These are question and answer sessions for us. So I just want to make sure everybody comes prepared with questions. And I don't think anything's off the table. Anything you want to ask them, I think this is where we get to say, okay, we like this, we didn't like this, what can you do about this, why are you doing this? These are things that, this is our chance to talk to them before we send them back to bring back a second presentation. So bring your questions, and hopefully we'll fill the whole hour with each of them with enough questions, and we'll get a lot more information and share some information with them. So does anybody have any questions about that? The mayor does, he already has his hand up.
Charlie, just in fairness to the presenters, if some of us have a complex question, should we maybe send that to you first so they would be able to prepare? Because I hate to ask a verbal question. I want to know how the sharing will go of catering or how you're going to do those things.
Sure.
In fairness, if some of us have tough questions, you want us just to tell you those so you can give those to the presenters so they could...
I think that would be fine. Absolutely. Jim, that'd be all right with you, right? If we, I think if you have, especially if you have a complex question, that might be easier to write down. You can send them to us and we can forward them to them.
Yeah, we can do that. And then also, I think the developers might have questions for you. What did you like about my proposal? How could,
It's a back and forth.
Improvement?
Yeah.
You may have some questions where you think the site wasn't big enough, and then they may want to clarify that. But to tell them what you're concerned about, and that way they can address it in the next round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that'd be fine.
I just remember on Brewholla's site is that when they first came to us at City Hall and just told us how many thousand people come there for beer, it was really a high number, but they could verify that number and showed us what they did. So it was just really interesting. If you're not, Jim, I know you're into craft beers, but the rest of us, we're not into craft beers. I mean, we'd have no idea, but it was amazing how many people traverse that site. And I'm sure that, Shanna, you have, in Chamber, you have ideas of different things of what you want to attract and make it something more than just it's the experience, right?
Absolutely, yeah. No, anything is fair game, I think.
Yeah, Charlie, so I was maybe curious if we have some standard questions that we know we want all of them. I'm also looking for transparency and a sake of how do we ask some of these questions to all of them? And is there a set of standard questions and then we add on to that with some of our additional customized questions per that? I just think that might be helpful to have more of a level playing field when we look at some of the Q&A, but just a thought.
We can try to work with Charlie on some of those. I think also they all have your comments, so some of them I think would welcome the opportunity to say, I'd like to address this comment because I don't feel you understood it, or here's how we can improve it.
Yeah, if we could get together, I guess, and put together a list of basic questions that you would ask all of them probably.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to individual ones, I still think we need to count on you guys to be fully engaged and thinking about specific things, because we can't. Something might come up. while you're listening to them. So we need to make this a pretty freewheeling and open and honest discussion, right?
As far as the scope of the questions, I mean, we have a set of information that was delivered to us in round one. Do we want to dive too far into the questions that we're asking in the second half of the RFP, or do we want to keep the questions more relevant to what was requested of them in the first half of the RFP?
I don't, just at first, this is one of those complex questions you should have written down first.
Yeah, sorry. Just because I'm like, there are questions that I would have, but they're more
Wait a
relevant
minute.
to the second half of the proposal, and if we're giving them time to work on their proposal, I don't want them to give us an answer that they might not have information for yet.
I think anything's fair game, and they will have a chance, obviously, to do more work after this session. So I don't see there's an issue with that.
Okay, just want to
Anybody else?
clarify.
I mean, anybody else think? I think it'll be fine.
Okay,
Don't be afraid to ask, and we
No,
can,
yeah.
we can look at those. I think it's appropriate that we ask about things that we think will be in the second round RFP, for sure.
okay. Or maybe even the way that we ask the questions, knowing that there's more information to be provided in the second half.
I've got Claire here telling me who wants to talk, so it's good. Try to make eye contact and still see everybody. Joe?
Well, is it fair to say that, I mean, this is to get a sense both ways because of the proposals that were presented. So maybe there are some common questions, but it feels to me like there's just specific to, right? And once we present, or once they have the time to make a presentation, there's going to be Q&A back and forth on their presentations as well, months from now.
Yeah. But that will be
So
after
it feels
they've
like
done
this
their
is
second
kind of
round
to start
presentation.
setting some
Yeah.
foundations of major issues or
Yeah.
positives that we're seeing related to each of these projects, or something we see in one project that we all go, whoa, that's a kind of a nice attribute that would be great in any of them.
Yeah.
So it's, like you said, it's more of a back and forth.
Yeah, that's the way I see it, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't think we should be shy about anything. There are no, well, I suppose there are ridiculous questions, but I don't think we're going to hear any of those. I think it's just a good chance for us to have a conversation with them. And yes, they will be allowed to ask us questions too, so that's the whole point of it. Okay, so be ready. That's how this started. All right. Let's move on to our second item. We were able to add, since everyone had questions about traffic flow around all of these proposals, came up in virtually every one, Jim was kind enough to ask Jeremy to come by and help us out with that.
Jeremy Gordon, our traffic engineer, is here along with Todd Nachmus, our city engineer, and so they've put together some information. I think the other thing is, I'm going to encourage really all the applicants to talk to the other departments that might be reviewing this down the road. We have sort of a common review meetings where they can come in, talk to fire, stormwater, all at the same time, so that if there's a concern, they can spot it now and then address it prior to then submitting their final proposal. So I'll turn this over to Jeremy.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Mayor, commissioners, committee members. Those of you that may not know me, I'm Jeremy Gordon. I'm the traffic engineer for the city. Been here for 20 plus years. I've seen some things in my time here, so this is not the highly detailed analysis that the highly paid consultants get. This is more of a 10 to 15,000 foot range. So we'll just get into it here. Jim reached out earlier in the week to put my thoughts and Tom's thoughts on the sites and just go from there. So looked at a couple things for each site. The travel routes coming to each one, the key intersections, how they're going to access these sites, the daily traffic counts that are out there today, and then in the traffic world, there's a thing called the Trip Generation Manual based on land use. Decades of researchers have looked at sites, and if it's this thing, it's going to generate this many trips, and if it's this thing, so it varies from small sites to massive sites and everything in between. And then we did look at other items of note, vehicular access, pedestrian access, and then any site-specific comments. Like Jim just referenced, we have site plan meetings where we work with developers and architects on, their chunk of land and how our city rules may impact developing those sites. So that's a good comment Jim made. So like I said, trip generation. So ITEs, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, got all kinds of land uses. What we're looking at here is a convention center. You guys are probably well known about this. It's designed to host large-scale events such as trade shows, exhibits, conferences, conventions. Usually entails large exhibit halls, meeting rooms, and breakout spaces, auditoriums, ballrooms, and then support areas like lobbies, food service, and admin. Very well aware, key characteristics, large gatherings for business, professional, or recreational purposes. And I will note, they've got studies for years. You know, there's small sites, there's large sites, there's everything in between. So there's researchers and there's professors putting logarithmic scales to these things. So there's equations that you can figure out your size and what it's going to generate. So highly variable, depending upon what type of event, duration, and scheduling. Peak traffic is usually at the beginning and end, and then it can fluctuate based on the type, the regional accessibility, and then parking availability and walking. So Jim asked me to look into 4, and they're in no particular order. I started out with the Fargo Dome site. This is how folks are going to get here typically. It's got good access to the interstate. I-29 is on the left. People will use 12th Avenue North, 19th Avenue North. You guys are all very familiar with how you get to the Fargo Dome for all the tailgating, all events that happen there. 10th and University will get you there. 18th Street on the west side of campus is handy. So here's the key intersections as you look at the site. 19th Avenue, very important. 17th Avenue will be the way you get in there. Multiple ways to get in. Existing daily traffic counts. So on the left is I-29. The relevant numbers are really in yellow. So if you think about, you hear these numbers on daily traffic. I know what they mean. You may not know what they mean. So 17,000 vehicles a day is on 19th Avenue. That's a pretty decent number. 5-lane facility can handle that. If you look a mile to the south, 12th Avenue North has about 20,000 vehicles a day. And then as you move to the east, it goes down a hair. University by the Stars gets 7,500, 8,500, just to give you a scale of what's going on out there. So the trip generation manual looks at the gross floor area, and it would include all things, not just the exhibits or the ballrooms. It's all of it. So on their proposal, Jim had me look at the submittal. On the low end is 66,000. That's without any dome facilities. It could get up to 206,000 with the use of the dome. So we look at total trips, which would be the weekday trip, and then the AM and PM peak hours. And I was really surprised how low these numbers actually are when you think of a convention center. So on the low end, it could be 62 trips for the entire day, and on the high end, it could be 500. Let's just say that was off by a factor or 2. The daily trip could be 1,000 trips. So go back up to this, 1,000 trips based on streets that are carrying 17 or 20, hardly noticeable, probably not noticeable. So like I said, they would come in on 17th Avenue from University, 16th or 18th Street. And other items to note, this area for vehicles, very well built, a network near here, no impacts to our system. Pedestrian access, we've got plenty of paths and sidewalks present. We've got signals and hawk beacons out there for the use of the dome. And then really site-specific comments, really no issues. We can build it and we'll see no impacts. So you can stop me at any time if you have questions, but I'll just keep rolling. So Shields Arena, this is the second site. This has got good access from both interstates. Folks can get there on Veterans, 45th, 32nd. Those are all either 6-lane facilities or 4-lane facilities, and a number of good collector streets getting into the site. So key intersections on the left is Veterans and Cedar, and then we had Cedar just to the south, and then 51st Street. Though we did have our growing pains with this site as the arena developed and got bigger, but I think we're past those now. Our infrastructure is basically fully built out here. So daily traffic, you'll notice on Veterans and 45th Street, we're in the 20,000 plus, pushing 30,000 on 45th Street. On 32nd Avenue, we're in the mid-teens, going to 20,000 near I-29. So on this site, they They gave us 86,000 without use of the arena and up to 150,000 with the use of the arena. And the daily total trips could get up to 368. And if that's off by factor of 2, you could get a daily trip of 750. And then AM and PM peak, not even 100 cars coming and going. So that all could easily go into the existing infrastructure that we have out there.
Quick question, since both the Fargo Dome and the Shields Arena are active sites that are doing types of things that kind of fit some of the convention center activities or sports activities, those are both inclusive of kind of current usage, this analysis, then? This isn't-
Basically, so-
Okay, this isn't just with the addition of the convention center?
Well, no, this would be just the convention
Okay,
type use. If there were games at either of the sites, those are over and above this.
okay.
Jeremy, on these numbers, the 211 to 368, is that per hour or per day?
No, that's the whole day.
Okay.
So when you had me look at, you guys had the report that showed the average attendance that you're going to expect, 1,000. Most of the events were up to 1,000. Trade shows were up to 2,000. In the traffic world, that's still a fairly small number. If you think of like the Shields Arena, if there's a hockey event, that's 3,500, 4,000, 4,500. I mean, that's multiple times larger than what a convention center would be. So the Shields Arena, it's a well-built network. We got a lot of sidewalks and paths. Really no issues on our end connecting.
Can I ask just a really quick clarifying question? So to the point of if we were to have in either one of these sites, both things, a game or a concert at the same time as a convention center, has that analysis, like with the current trips for a special event like that, and then you add the capacity of a convention center on top of that, is that at all concerning, or was that taken into consideration?
That would definitely be concerning. So we would probably want a more in-depth traffic study completed. I think as part of the convention Fargo Dome expansion, Fargo Dome vote that happened in the last year or two, we did have a traffic study done for the Fargo Dome specifically, so that's probably already done. But the other 3 sites, well, this site and then the other 2, we'd want a more in-depth study. But that's a good question.
Can I ask a question? So do you think once we get to a final, whoever the final pick is, then we would have a traffic study done, and if there needs to be recommendations, is that something that we would have an outside group do, or would we have you do that? Does that make sense?
No, we would hire a consultant that would complete that. So, yeah.
But like with a final thing, to have them make sure that whatever the site is, that we maximize we would have that study done more than likely? Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, or maybe we want it for all 4 of them, before we make that decision, but we don't have to decide that right now. But I had a question, though, about the additional numbers you're talking about, the few hundred, 50 to however many 100 extra trips, that would still apply whether there was an event happening at the Fargo Dome or Shields Arena separately, right? I mean, it's still going to generate, adding the convention would generate that same amount of additional traffic.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, okay.
Can I just throw this out here, and Tom is up there to speak too, but so to me, just from so far, these 2, it looks like it's not a huge impact, especially if it's managed where they're not having the same events at the same time. But the other 2 might have more issues, and it might make sense to do that at those 2 sites especially, to make sure that I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying, yeah, that would make sense. Well, let's hear what he has to say about those.
I think part of the conversation Jeremy and I had is that with these first 2 sites he's looked at is that they are both used to hosting large events currently, right? And they're not currently creating any issues in the transportation system. So I don't think we would expect this to create any. But part of what we also talked about is that there are a couple avenues we could take as far as the traffic impact study. If this was just coming in on its own, we would typically require one because we want to understand what impact is it going to have to public infrastructure. Do we need to add signals? Do we need to add turn lanes? Do we need to add additional pedestrian safety devices? Whatever it might be. And so we could certainly wait until that's narrowed down to one and review that, or if the committee wanted to understand that, we could solicit quotes from consulting firms to look at all sites and provide that information as well, if the committee and city commission choose for us to do that, so.
Yeah, I'd maybe just add, this was a major factor in our scoring and weighting was congestion and traffic accessibility. So I don't know how we would make a decision. I would think that those traffic studies would be essential for us, even as you further the consideration into the final. That would be my thought.
It does seem most appropriate to do it on the front half too. If we're asking people to design proposals, doing a traffic study on the front half instead of waiting until they've put all the work into it seems kindest.
Okay, let's put a pin in that and let these guys finish.
Okay, we'll go on to the next site. So the Bruhala site, the next two sites don't have the big events happening on a normal basis. So Bruhala, this is shoehorned in north side of the railroad tracks. It definitely is unique. We've got no railroad crossings for that mile stretch from University to 25th Street. So the more and more I thought about this, folks would most likely enter this area from 25th Street, from I-94, or Main Avenue from I-29. They could come in from the downtown area on First Avenue North, but it's pretty difficult to get to this site from Main Avenue from the east. Even local folks would have a hard time getting from Main Avenue to First Avenue North in the downtown area with the grade separations and the one-ways. So the key intersections here are really the west end, 25th Street at Main and First, and then at University at First. You could also use 3rd Avenue North, that's a lesser street, and then the streets coming in are even lesser than that. So traffic counts that are happening on Main Avenue, I apologize for two graphics, but North Dakota, I can blame it on the North Dakota DOT. They had downtown inset and then a citywide inset. So the left side of the screen shows Main Avenue. There's 26,000 vehicles a day near I-29, and it slowly decreases as you go east. It's about 20,000 at 25th Street. And then 25th Street itself is about 10 to 12,000. And then on the graphic on the right, First Avenue North would be the one you enter the site on. That's right around 3,000 vehicles a day. So in this area, I just looked at the one number, 100,000 square feet. The total trip daily would be 250, 245. And the AM and PM peak would be 20 to 25. And if it did double, it could be 500 trips for the day, but it would still be less than 50 during the peak hours, and that's easily accommodated on the existing network. So the one thing here, vehicular access, we got a well-built street network here. Like I mentioned, no railroad crossings for a mile do make it a little bit difficult to get to, but still, I think there's still small impacts to our existing street network. We do have sidewalks, and I did notice that there are lots planned to be on the north side of First Avenue. We would probably have to invest in a crosswalk flash and beacon of some variety to get across First Avenue. And that road was built 15 years ago, so we wouldn't need to be redoing First Avenue North for a while. And there's really no issues for us to connect, for them to connect to our system.
Can I ask, when you talk about 25th, was that looking all the way out to 94, and the interchange coming in? Do you see people coming in from that?
To the south.
Yeah.
Actually, 25th Street would probably be the best route to come in.
Okay.
Because you just go straight up.
Straight in.
Make a right-hand turn on First.
Okay.
And even if you did, let's just say you're coming from Moorhead on Main Avenue, you might take Main Avenue all the way to 25th Street and loop around and come up to First and then go back east. Because it's difficult to get up to First Avenue from Main. So the last site's the one right out here. I'll call it the Civic Quad. I've worked here for 20 plus years. I'm pretty familiar with how you can get to this site. There's a wide variety of ways. 10th University, 4th Street, Main, all the river bridges. You could come down from Second Avenue, or Second Street, Fourth Street. This one's a little bit obviously smaller. There are a number of key intersections here. And the more I thought of it, I think it's more positioned to be entered from maybe Fourth Street. People would walk across the area between the Civic Center and the library. With the truck loading dock that they have planned between Second and Third, I don't know if that's a desirable spot for folks to enter. So I think you would really have an area where you would have a lot of activity on First Avenue for those blocks, and then really on Fourth Street for a couple blocks for parking and pickups and drop-offs. So daily traffic counts downtown here. You remember I was talking about teens and 20s out on the edge, on the suburban area. Downtown here, we're less than 10,000 for the most part. Main Avenue has the most, that's about 10 to 12,000. First Avenue North is right around 10,000 at the river, and then it goes down as you go through downtown to about 5,000. Fourth Street's about 4,000. So here, the submittal just had the one number, 108,000 square feet. The total trips would be 265. Let's just say they could double up to 500. In the AM and PM peaks, you could be 22 to 27. Let's just say they could get up to 50. That's easily accommodated with our network. So just the items to note on vehicular access, we got a well-built grid network. I will say the small site with limited access, First Avenue and Fourth Street may have some congestion at times. But since we do have so many streets and so many ways to get in and out, I would imagine minimal impacts in the long term. We do have plenty of paths, sidewalks, and traffic signals. And then on the site-specific stuff, I'll just go to the next slide. So the other three sites, they're basically building on their own land outside of our street right away. This one gets to be in our right of way and have impacts to our existing street stuff. So I'll just start on the left. So the red boxes are the areas where there's conflict with our city-owned infrastructure. So in Third Street, there's water, there's fiber, there's water, there's sanitary, and there's storm sewer. The most difficult one is the green line, which would be the sanitary sewer. That comes across between the Civic Center and the library, comes over to Third Street, and then it makes its way to this lift station. That would have to get rerouted to go somewhere else. You're not going to put a building over that sewer pipe. So that's in the Third Street. That's not insurmountable, but it would definitely be a challenge. And then the lift station itself, you need to have access to that because it's a very critical piece of our infrastructure. And then on First Avenue itself, they've got that truck loading and unloading with two ingress and egress. That does get into our street right away with impacts to the sidewalk and the parking. Again, not insurmountable, but there would be a change to the use out there. So this area, Second Street and First Avenue are new streets. They're basically built in the last 10 years. So future street reconstruction is going to happen west of Third Street, but in this vicinity, it's really not planned. So with that, that's all I have for you. I can answer any questions.
So Jeremy, can you go back to that slide right there? So to me, obviously you're the expert, but for me, Third Street, we would want that to stay, and that's where the loading dock should be off of there, because that gets the truck traffic off of First Avenue North. This is me, an amateur traffic engineer, but I'm just saying First Avenue North, that is not a good place to be having semis backing up. So anyway, that concerns me, and I get it that it's space challenged and they're trying to use as much space as possible, but to abandon Third Street, and they need that, I think, for the space, but that would be much more ideal to have the trucks get on off of a thorough street and use that for the loading dock area, but that's just me. So you guys have big frowns on your face like I should be not talking about this kind of stuff, which is nothing new, but can you add?
What I'd say, and again, it goes back to Jim's comment earlier, we have a site plan review group that would be happy to meet with all the various teams, because we can talk through things like that. So like the first driveway they're showing on First Avenue, we wouldn't allow that. It's too close to our intersection. And so those are the types of conversations that'd be really good to have with them now before they put additional work into this. Again, this site, you know, I have some concerns about impact to the sanitary sewer lift station, how we protect that infrastructure if something were to happen here. But again, we're happy to have those conversations with the teams.
So help me out with this. So if Third Street, you only have to move that sanitary sewer line if they want to build above it, right? If Third Street stayed open, would you still have to move it?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you look at the right graphic, there number 14, that's their driveway into the underground parking. So Third Street basically becomes the access to the underground parking.
Uh-huh.
At what point or what stage in this review process now does the committee think is the appropriate time to have each of the proposers have the site plan review conversation? I just wonder, does that help to answer some of the questions or prepare them for some of the questions we might have? I wonder, where does that fit in the process of all of this?
What I'd like them to do is go and meet with the site plan review, probably shortly after they meet with this committee, so that they can find out what the concerns are, and then they can address those concerns in their final proposal.
And maybe just one thing to add, you know, I think Commissioner Pepcorn has talked about it when it comes to incentives. Always the concern is that I would want people to understand that are submitting on this, that even if their site is selected, they still need to potentially go through a plating process, which is a separate process from this approval. They still have to go through a site plan approval, which is separate than this. And so that's always my fear, is that someone maybe doesn't understand that fully and goes through and says, well, our site was selected and our site concept was selected and therefore we're approved. And then fire planning, engineering have concerns of what was proposed. So again, that's why I think there's value in having staff meet with some of those teams now to address some of those concerns early on.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a great idea, yeah.
Are
That way,
there-
ASAP, huh?
Yeah, are there other teams you guys would recommend them meeting with?
What's that?
Are there other teams you would recommend them meet with for their next proposal?
I would say willingness to meet with all the teams that are being shortlisted.
Yeah, I think so.
Can I just add, so to me, the other three kind of had less concerns, and so I do think it'd be worth the extra effort to try to get these resolved before we get too far down the road. And it would be beneficial to them and to us. And so, and obviously we can't make them, but I would encourage them to do it right now. Start at least talking to you, and maybe we should consider paying extra to have this site clarified for us, because the other three basically didn't have as many concerns. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we'll find out if they have other concerns, but for instance, your stormwater rules, and so do they need to add, additional on-site stormwater, or is there adequate available? Where is underground utilities is something that have to be relocated. But finding that out now so they can plan for it.
That's where I'm just wondering if some of this preliminary work, like if we should, not that I want to slow down the process, but for the sake of all of our time and the phasing of all of this, should they be required to do this now, make any modifications and changes to that, when we are coming back and asking questions? Well, did you find out anything, or have you had any changes to that? I get it that could be in the second phase, but I'm starting to question the process that we're taking, and when we're asking clarifying questions for the next round, it would be great to have some of these pieces identified. So I don't know, maybe I'm off base.
When we look at these, what we're going to ask in the next round is, one, address any concerns from city departments on your preliminary reviews. So there's an assumption that will happen, and they will be required to address those concerns.
Mallory, did you want to say something? Or is that Kent?
Okay, sorry. No, this is Mallory. Not to move us into the next thing, but the timeline going forward, knowing that we have the Dome and Enclave coming next week already, I think to Shannon's point, like it is important to have those questions, but I think more of a conversation at this point. And then if after all 4 presentations or all Q&A sessions happen, then we can get Jeremy and his team connected with all 4 of them so that those conversations happen sooner rather than later.
Joe?
Well, to Shannon's points and Commissioner Pepcorn, having the site review process done and finding things that maybe we all weren't aware of, they weren't aware of, that could add significant cost and time. It feels like those things those feel like fundamental pieces to me. And if we don't address the fundamentals, or the city doesn't address and doesn't feel comfortable, really sort of, in my opinion, kind of stops some things. So having a Q&A scheduled right now may be premature based on what we just heard. At least that's my.
But are there other things we might find in that Q&A that would also go into potential other things they have to look at?
Well, I think so. I'm just asking the committee and the staff is, are there critical things that you can't get past some of these? What we just learned on this site it worries me that we could spend time having a bunch of Q&A, and then afterwards they sit down with staff and realize for whatever reason, things have to change considerably. Just feels like there's something missing here in terms of the process that just came up in this conversation.
So I got a question for you guys. Sorry, if I turn around, they can't hear me. So, hypothetically, if we delayed 1 week, if we pushed everything back 1 week, how soon could you have these? Could you get all 4 of them, have meetings with all 4 of them in the next 2 weeks?
We typically have 2 standing meetings on Thursdays that could go over this stuff, so we could do that in the next 2 weeks. If those teams have availability next week and the week after.
Right. Okay. What do y'all think?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So just say, example, we go with the Civic Quad site. Who is responsible for moving the sewer lines and lift station cost? Is that added onto the project? Is that something, since it's city land, that the city pays for and then taxpayers have to pick up? And secondly, where is library parking proposed in this site? Has that been taken into consideration? Because I know the library wasn't consulted about it, and their fear is their parking is going away.
I'll answer the first part of the question because I know that, or know a part of that. I would say that's my concern. So if the intent here is that we have to do something to modify the sanitary sewer lift station, if we need to relocate utilities in 3rd Street, I have a concern if that would be a city cost because we don't have that programmed in our CIP. And so that would be a concern of this site if that's not part of their proposal to pay for the cost of that relocation.
Tom, do you have any idea, like ballpark, what a project like that would run?
No. More than $1 million for sure when we're talking about relocation of this type of infrastructure. Part of the benefit we have is that we have a street reconstruction project coming up, but it would certainly be also touching infrastructure that we've already reconstructed. Huge concern here is the sanitary sewer that wraps and enters into the lift station. We need that area unencumbered so that we could excavate if ever needed. And so there were years ago, I remember a conversation with some of the work that Scott Bishop did here in this area that was looked at to some extent. I'm sure we could dig up some of that information as well, but that's certainly a challenge at that site.
Yeah, I don't know that moving it is going to be a practical answer. So, I sort of know how I think we should proceed. I feel like maybe we should, Mallory, sorry, but I feel like we should probably bump everything a week and give you guys time to consult with them before we have our Q&A with all four of them.
Yeah, I would weigh in, and I would agree with that. I just think there may be pieces that would, we're hoping this isn't the case, but it may preclude the progress of a site altogether, right? Or even modifications that are significant of any of the four, right? I'm just,
Yeah, we need to find out.
Yeah, agree.
Mallory?
All I was gonna say is I'm fine moving them. It would just affect the dome and enclave. They would move from the 17th to the 31st. That would be the only thing I would suggest.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we need to vote on that, or can we just do it? I think we're gonna, I'm not sure we're gonna take next week off, because we're using a lot of time on this, so we're probably gonna run out of time to talk about the RFP. So next week, we could talk more about the RFP itself and what we want in there in the scoring. So I don't necessarily think we should eliminate the meeting, but it'd be shorter next week. Commissioner?
Yeah, well, maybe in addition to that, bringing the questions we would have had in the Q&A, so we start building what those specific questions could be too as part of that conversation.
Yeah, and offline via text here, Mallory suggested she could set up a shared document. Mallory, can you just give us a quick explanation of how that might work for the questions?
Sure. My suggestion was just to have 4 separate documents on like SharePoint or something that we can all edit and review. And so then that way everyone can see all of the questions. And like Shannon had said, like if there's a standard maybe 4 or 5 questions that we want to ask everyone, those would also be included. But then as we're thinking of things that we want to ask each individual team, there might be some, you know, if one of us adds a question, it might prompt someone else to think of something else. So then that way we all have access to it. And then the second part of that is I would then also give each of the development teams access to their own list of questions so they have time to prepare and review that in advance.
Okay, that sound okay to everybody? So do you think we could have that by early next week, mid next week?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I'm not sure I even want to bring this up.
I know where you're going to.
When's the next city commission meeting after the 13th? 27th? Well, you know where I'm going. Do we need to pull that off and move it to the 27th? Till we get some of this information? I mean, this could be somewhat game-changing.
I think so. It's pretty hard to vote on something without all the information.
Yeah.
I think in,
What's the mechanism for that?
well, 2 additional weeks, I don't think you're going to know any more than you probably know today on whether or not these 4 sites should go ahead for the next.
Well, that's fair. That could be true. you
Charlie,
know, So.
we would just table this at the commission meeting. You know, it's on
You
the
could
agenda.
table it, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and then it would automatically go to the next meeting?
We could determine when that meeting is by tabling it with a date.
Yeah, or we could have the vote and then always come back if we have to change something. I mean, that's, those are the 2 options, I guess.
I think that the way I think about it is if the 4 moving forward, if one of them, let's just hypothetically say one of them is not viable any longer, does that change the fact that those were the 4 that moved forward? If that means it doesn't, and now we go from 4 down to 3, then the recommendation stays firm that these are the 4 that are being recommended. If we as a committee believe an inviable option then allows for another option to be added to the table, that would be the reason in my mind that you would not proceed with a vote. But if we believe out of the 4, we have some viable projects, I think those are the 2 ways to look at it, right? If we think another proposal is going to move into a spot if indeed something is not as viable any longer, then, so those are the 2 ways that I'm thinking about that.
Can we have an alternate ready to go should one have to drop out? Like if an unexpected $1 million additional cost comes up, we have an alternate that could fill that 4 spot?
Not having an immediate answer to that question, I'm going to, let's let Dave talk before you jump in. Go ahead.
So, but the thing is, I would be in favor of moving with the 4 that we have, because there was a break. There was like, the 4 had a pretty good, there was a pretty good break, and so that would not be fair to everybody below that break. And the other, so to me, we have to, if one drops out now, then we're 3. We don't, you can't start going back and bringing somebody up. That just, I think that would be more problematic. And so I would be a supportive of, if something happens or one of them is not going to work, then we go down to 3. That's just my opinion.
Jim, you were going to say something?
Kind of echo what Dave was saying. When we went into this, we were trying to get it down to 3 to 5, and
Yeah.
and so if we stay with these 4, and someone might withdraw,
I mean, anything could be voted on again, down the road. I mean, if it came to that, but I think I tend to agree that we, for purposes of moving forward, we just do it and then see what happens, because now we're speculating.
And Charlie, I agree with Commissioner Pepcorn, there is a break. And if, for instance, 2 had issues, and we decided to recommend bringing that next one up that's closest to the break, they still would have to go through the same process, and we don't know what that would bring us, so.
Yeah. I think we stick with it. I'll bring it to you, and you guys can vote however you decide, but I agree. I just as soon get that going so we can keep moving. If we don't get that permission, then we're actually kind of flailing in the wind anyway, because we don't really know what you guys are going to approve in the end, so.
Well, and I think it even adds even more assurance to the commissioners that these are the 4 being recommended. Here's the process by which they're being further vetted, including this site visit with the city. So I think that can add some more clarity to that.
And this is, this site or anyone that comes up with any similar difficulty, obviously nothing that's been identified yet, they may propose a solution that would change it so it could work. So, but that's why I think they should meet. We should get those meetings going. Next week, we'll meet to talk about the RFP. And then the next 2 weeks will be the question and answer. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate your help on this. And yes, we will want you to get together with them. How do we do that? Jim, you can work that out, right?
Yeah, they'll contact Megan Elshog in the planning department. I'll get that information to all of them.
Okay, I hear someone, either Mallory or Kent, wants to talk. Go ahead. Mallory? Kent?
Wasn't me.
Okay. Kent, are you out there? We're hearing road noise from somebody. Kent, did you have a comment you want to make?
I'm muted.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay. Okay, so next week we need to discuss the RFP some more and perhaps the scoring. And then we bump the 2 that were supposed to be next week to the 31st, assuming that we can work that out with them. So I'm sure we can. And then the traffic guys are going to get together with each of them and look at all of these issues with each group before we start our Q&A with any of them, right? 2 weeks?
So
Thank
then,
you.
Jim, just for clarification, it's just the traffic department that we want them to meet with, or are there
No.
other?
That was
Yes.
No,
my
the-
question.
It's city engineering, it's fire, it's planning, and traffic engineering. Yeah, engineering covers stormwater, any kind of utility issues.
Going to get the
planning
full
and-
city treatment.
Yeah, and
Okay, good.
we do this with all developers, trying to meet with them all with one, they can meet with 4 departments at once, so they don't have to run in circles.
We're not expecting 4 separate meetings.
Okay, yeah, and that'll give them a chance to try to answer them before the Q&A. So we'll learn a lot then. All right, well, I'm glad you guys were able to be here. Thanks for setting that up, Jim. Anything else for the good of the order today? We'll still see you at the City Commission meeting on Monday. Okay, I guess we're adjourned. Thank you.